You don't need me in this.
You didn't need... I do, that's part of the assignment. Okay. Battle of Marathon by John Bradley, Harper Monahan, Cayman Peevler, Anna Mulliken, and Chase Parker. Battle summary. The Battle of Marathon was the first battle in the Greco-Persian War. The war began because of Athenians trespassing. In Athens, they were running low on fertile farmland. The Athenians knew that Persia had plenty of land. The Athenians sent a ship to Persia to begin farming there. Persia has a huge road system, so it didn't take long for the Persians to find Athenians farming and trespassing. Once their farming scheme had been discovered, the Persians forced the Athenians out of there. The Athenians returned to Athens. Darius, the Persian king, decided that he wanted to make an example out of the Athenians for trespassing. For this, he would send an army to Athens to annihilate the Athenians, so no one else would go against the Persian army. Darius sent his soldiers to fight the Athenians. The Athenians would do everything in their power to keep the Persians from destroying Athens. For this reason, they chose to have their battle in a large field called Marathon. Marathon was on the Persians' way to Athens from the port they were landing at. The advantage of having the battle at Marathon is that Marathon was 26.2 miles away from Athens. If they lost this battle, their families would have time to escape Athens, since the Persians were planning on destroying Athens after winning the battle. The Persians are bringing 60,000 to 100,000 soldiers to the battle. Meanwhile, there are only about 10,000 Athenian soldiers at this battle. Despite the odds, the Athenian soldiers have a decent advantage in this battle. Going into this battle, the Athenians have everything to lose. However, the Persians don't. Because of this, the Athenians are fighting with everything they have. The battle is started in August 490 BCE and only lasted 5 days. During the course of the battle, about 6,400 Persians are killed and only 194 Athenians were killed. Over the course of the battle, the Athenians managed to get the upper hand, so the Persians retreat from the battle and head back to their ships rather than going to destroy Athens. The Athenians send the quickest one of their runners back to Athens in the 26.2 mile distance, which later became more popularly known as a marathon. Upon arrival, this runner shouts Nike, which means victory in Greek. He then passes out and falls over dead, thus concluding the Battle of Marathon. Significance of the battle. The Battle of Marathon was significant since it started off the Greco-Persian War. It is also important because it is the first battle that the Persians lost. It is also incredible the difference in sizes of the armies. The Athenian army, with 90,000 less people than the Persians, still won. It is shocking that the Athenians only lost 194 soldiers and the Persians lost 6,400 soldiers. This is an incredible underdog story between a huge empire and a bunch of small city-sized governing bodies. The Athenian victory gave the Greek city-states more confidence to be able to defend against future Persian attacks. This is the specifics of the battle. The Persians' original intentions for fighting the Athenians was to attempt to keep them from supporting the Ionian uprising. These Ionian uprisings were causing trouble for the Persians, and since the Ionians were Greek, they were constantly receiving support from the other Greek city-states. Athens fought in the battle only to defend from Persian invaders. In fact, Athenians had one of two choices: submit to slavery without partaking in conflict, or fight to defend themselves. They ultimately chose to fight. The Persian infantry consisted of cavalry, which is men on horsebacks, and infantry, mostly archers, that came from the Aegean Sea border. The Athenians consisted of hoplites, coeler, based on which side had which troops. The Athenians and Persians were very even. Although this is true, the Athenians had around 10,000 to 20,000 hoplites, while the Persians only had 90,000 barbarians. Who was involved? The city-state involved in the Battle of Marathon was Athens and the Persian Empire. The Persians began the war because Athens trespassed on their land and they were running out of sources to farm. The Athenians fought back to protect themselves, and in the battle, Persians were led by Darius, but he did not go. Instead, he put his general in charge, who was his nephew Datis, and the second in command was also his nephew Artaphernes. The leader of Athens who had led them to battle was the general Miltiades. This is the Persian commander Datis, and this is the Athenian commander Miltiades. Maps and geography. The Battle of Marathon was fought in northeast Marathon Plains in Attica. This marked the first battle and would easily kick off the Greek-Persian War. Greeks had an advantage in the war because there were also weapons were more efficient, and they also had shields to protect themselves in the war. Who were the soldiers? The Battle of Marathon was fought mostly by citizens of Athens, allied by the Plataea and the Persians. The Persian forces are commanded by Datis, Artaphernes, and the Athenian force was led by the general Miltiades. Diagram of the battle. Shows descriptions of the landscape, locations of each military, and routing of the armies. Through here, you can see part of the landscape is a flat field here, and another part of it is a mountainous terrain, which I'll show a more detailed image of. The Marathon battle terrain. The battle took place in the Marathon plain. The Athenians strategically chose when and where to stop the Persian march to Athens. They chose to defend the area of Kotroni, where the plain of Marathon was located. The Athenians and their allies chose a location for where they camped with marshes and mountainous terrain. This prevented Persian cavalry from joining the Persian infantry, which ended up causing a stalemate for 5 days. The Athenian force was in a position where they could use the stalemate to their advantage, as by the time the combating began, they were on mostly flat ground attempting to bait the Persians towards the mountains. The Athenian battle plan. The original Athenian battle plan was to bait the Persians to try to follow towards the mountainous terrain where the Athenians originally camped, only to surround them. The Athenians had the goal to start surrounding more towards the higher ground so that the Persian cavalry could not join the Persian infantry. The Persians could not take control of the outside, so the Athenians could better off surround the Persians. What ended up happening was that not very many Athenians were caught in the position of fighting on barely higher ground, giving them a disadvantage, but even then they were still able to bait the Persians into being surrounded. This resulted in great success and led to the Athenian victory. The image above shows how there were 3 groups of Athenians. The middle group was meant to bait the Persians and be driven toward the mountains. Then the outside groups would surround the Persians, making the archers have less to work with, causing the cavalry to be outnumbered in corners. So their main group would be baiting the Persians into the mountains, as these groups would come around to surround them. Who won? The Persian army broke away in panic toward their own ships. Many people were slaughtered. The Athenian victory at Marathon marked the end of the battle, and the Persians retreated to Asia. So with the Persians leaving, the Athenians were left to win. We may not be for sure that the Athenians won, since our primary source was for the Athenians and likely biased, but we imagine that with the progress of the war, we know it is most likely that the Athenians won. Our primary source is from Herodotus, who was a Greek citizen, and he was slightly biased. Yet from our feat of arms at Marathon, we deserve to have this honor, yeah, and more besides, seeing that you alone of all Greeks we met at Persian single-handedly, nor failed in that high enterprise by reason that you have all fought the Persians at Marathon. Okay. Do you have any questions?
No, I do not.
Okay, what is the question you have?
Am I supposed to ask questions?
I would think that'd be very clever if you are curious, since this is fascinating.
Well, Harper. Okay. How did the Persian army get there?
Well, they took their ships across from Persia, They had large bulk ships which they took